This session is all about how to develop your community, growing that community team. So in this session, what we want to do is we want to talk about why do you need a wider community team, who is on your team, and a blueprint to build your team out even stronger than it is right now. So as we start this, we just have to start with why. We always want to start with why. And so why do you need a wider community team? Well, your load is getting heavier. Your responsibility is getting greater. You really need to share the load as much as possible for the library to move forward. You really need eyes everywhere, and you can't be everywhere, so that ultimately you can keep your finger on the pulse of the community. So when you're doing that, you need to consider first who is already a part of your team right now, and who do you want to be a part of your team going forward? So when you're thinking about your team, I want you to consider inside folks and outside folks. We're going to keep going back and forth between inside and outside. But whether it's an inside person or an outside person that's a part of the team or that you want to grow to, it's all about who knows who. Connectivity in your community. How do you leverage someone who already thinks highly of you to connect somewhere where you're trying to get into or build a better relationship with? And it all comes down to who knows who. So, who's on your team right now? Well, let's start with those on the inside. Obviously, that's your library staff, your board, your friends groups, your patrons, your volunteers. That's your inside team. Those folks have already bought you. You are already growing those relationships a lot deeper. And those are the folks you want to start with because they have the most invested with you. Well, who's on your team on the outside? Who do you want to grow to? Maybe it's local government. You want to have that better connection to them, or your local educational institutions, or maybe your chamber, the business community, nonprofits, the faith community, or maybe medical and the health and wellness communities. Whoever that may be, you're trying to find ways into those spaces so that the library can grow these deeper roots, can have more fruit for the community. But how do you do that? Well, let's give you a blueprint to help you build the team that you want. It's really called a champion strategy. You want to develop champions, people who will carry your message for you and grow that community deeper and wider. So there are actually 3 action steps to build a champion strategy. First, you have to identify your champions. Second, you have to educate your champions. And third, you have to empower your champions. So let's start with step 1. Step 1 is to identify your champions. And the way you do this is to start with those on the inside, the people who already are your champions because they belong to your community internally. And what we want to start to look at is who do they know? Who are they connected to on the outside in those areas we discussed? Who from the inside already has relationships in a favorable way with those on the outside you're looking to grow your team to include? So what you're going to do is you're going to take a look at what is the outside entity or outside person you're trying to build a bridge to. So in this case, let's say it's local government. You want to build a stronger relationship with your local government. Well, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to take those categories of internal champions and you're going to go one at a time and think about who has connection already to local government on your library staff. And then think about your board. Okay. Who on the board has a natural connection to local government, who already has favor with them? Who on our friends group has connection to local government, or our patrons that are a part of local government or have a favorable relationship, or our volunteers? You're literally going to go one at a time from your inside champions, the inside folks that are already a part of your team, and you're going to start to look at who knows someone to that outside entity or person that you're trying to build a relationship with. And you're just going to go one at a time. You'll go library staff, board, friends group, patrons, volunteers, as you look at the educational institutions you're trying to reach out to, or the folks inside those organizations, institutions, that you're trying to build a relationship with, or the chamber and business community, or the nonprofits, the faith community, or that medical health wellness community. Whatever those are, you're going to go one at a time after this session is over, and you're going to look at your inside group one at a time to connect to that entity or that person from the outside group one at a time. Now, the way that you can identify your champions very easily is by asking one question. And that question is, who among blank has the most favored relationship with blank? Who among blank has the most favored relationship with blank? So let's fill in the blanks. Who among your staff has the most favored relationship with your local government? That's how you find that champion on your staff, is who amongst all of our staff has the most favored relationship with local government. Or let's use another example. Who among your friends group has the most favored relationship with your Chamber of Commerce? You're literally going to go from your inside champions and look at who has the most favored relationships with those outside folks you're trying to be to grow your team with, be a new champion for you from the outside. That's step one. Step two is to educate your champions, whether internal or external. Once you have a champion, you need to educate them on what's important. And you've got to recognize that people have lots in their head right now. So what I would challenge you to do is, once you found a champion, give them the three most important things they need to know about your library. That particular person, if they're going to carry a message forward, what are the three things that they really need to know? And you need to go one step further with each one of these and give them the why behind that. So you say, this is so important. Our library has not raised its compensating rate in years. Why is that so important? Well, we are an entity that doesn't burden the taxpayers of this community with new taxes. So what are the three most important things you want them to know about the library as a champion, and give them the why behind each one of those so they can articulate that later. Why do you only give them three things that are most important? It's because our brains are so full right now that people can't retain a lot. So you have to do the work for them. If you're trying to grow this community group, if you're trying to find new champions, you've got to take your champions that you have and distill down in a concise format what it is you want them to carry forward. All right, step three. Step three is simply to empower your champions to carry that message forward. You've got to give them the ability to speak for you in places you can't get into maybe right now. So maybe you don't have a great relationship with your fiscal court or your local government, but someone inside does, and they can have access that you don't. Well, you've got to be able to empower them to speak for you, to give bite-sized, concise messages that bring value into those spaces. So how do you empower your champions? What you've got to do is you have to give them pre-designated statements that have 9 words or less. Again, it's all about conciseness and giving them something they can carry around and remember. So, for example, our library increases the quality of life for our community. Our library increases quality of life. Is less than 9 words. Our library is a catalyst for job growth. Our library strengthens families. Our library is the perfect community partner. Our library dramatically impacts childhood literacy. Our library is a top source for internet connectivity. All of these statements are less than 9 words. They're things that your champions could walk around with, get into a conversation with, go behind closed doors and carry that message that would then start a larger conversation to develop more champions. All right. So your community team starts with those on the inside, the people who have already bought you, who love the library, who are a part of it in some capacity. Then you have to start to think about, how are those people connected to the people that you'd like to be connected with outside, those entities or those people? How do your inside folks connect to those that are on the outside that you're trying to bring in or build a better relationship with so that you can grow a much stronger and more vibrant community team. When you have a strong community team, again, irrelevance goes away. You are the most relevant community partner. And that is what we're trying to achieve with these teachings. So here's to you having the strongest team possible.